The golden sun of Asoa hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the sprawling marketplace. It was a place of endless movement, merchants shouting, buyers haggling, and the air thick with the scent of roasted plantains, shea butter, and freshly dyed fabrics. At the heart of it all, Kwame Adebayo sat in his private chamber, high above the marketplace he had come to control. His wealth was vast, gold coins from the north, spices from the east, and ivory from the deep forests of the south. Traders sought his favor, kings knew his name, and yet, as he sat upon his cushioned seat, gazing through the open window, a strange feeling gripped his heart. Emptiness. Below him, his servants spoke in hushed voices. One of them, an elderly man named Jabari, had served him for years. Sensing Kwame's troubled thoughts, Jabari approached cautiously. "You have everything, master," Jabari said, bowing slightly. "Yet your face is troubled. What more could a man desire?" Kwame sighed. "That is the question, old friend. I have gold, I have power. But tell me, what good is all of this if my heart is still searching?" Jabari studied him for a long moment before speaking. "A tree cannot forget the soil from which it grew. A man may build great palaces, but if his heart is not home, his soul will always wander." The words struck Kwame deeply. His thoughts drifted to a place he had long buried, Akan Valley, the village of his childhood. 15 years. 15 years since he had left as a poor boy with nothing but dreams in his pocket. He had sworn never to return until he had everything. Now he had more than he ever imagined, yet why did he feel as if he had nothing at all? "Prepare my things," Kwame said suddenly, his voice firm. "I am going home." Jabari's eyes widened. "Akan Valley?" "Yes." A soft chuckle escaped the old man's lips. "Then your heart has already made its decision." As the evening stretched into night, Kwame's caravan was prepared. Fine horses, strong guards, and chests filled with goods for trade. But deep inside, Kwame knew that this journey was about more than business. He was returning to face the ghosts of his past, to see if Akan Valley still held a piece of his heart, and to learn whether the place he had left behind had truly been a prison, or the only home he had ever known. The journey from Asoa to Akan Valley was long and treacherous. The road twisted through thick forests, over rolling hills, and across mighty rivers where crocodiles lurked beneath the surface. Kwame Adebayo's caravan moved steadily through the land, a procession of wealth and power. He rode at the front on a black stallion, his gold-trimmed robes catching the sunlight. Behind him, carts carried silk from the east, salt from the desert, and barrels of palm oil, all signs of his success. But in his heart, doubt whispered. What would he find in Akan Valley? Would the people welcome him, or would they see him as an outsider? He had left a poor boy. He was returning a rich man. Would they still call him one of their own? As they reached the edge of the great Kosa forest, Jabari, the old servant, rode up beside Kwame. "This forest is not to be trusted at night," Jabari warned. "The spirits of the ancestors whisper here, and those who do not listen may lose their way." Kwame smirked. "I fear no spirits, old man." But as night fell and the caravan set up camp beneath the towering baobab trees, a strange wind rustled the leaves. The fire crackled, and the sound of drums echoed in the distance, but there were no villages nearby. Jabari sat by the fire, his voice low. "The spirits are watching." Kwame listened, but he said nothing. Somewhere deep inside, he felt it too. Something unseen was guiding his return. By dawn, the caravan emerged from the dense Kosa forest, the great trees giving way to rolling plains. The path before them was familiar, and Kwame's heart pounded as the first rooftops of Akan Valley appeared in the distance. The village looked both unchanged and unfamiliar. The same clay brick houses, the same towering iroko trees, the same scent of roasted maize and spices drifting through the air. But something felt different. As the caravan neared, villagers gathered, watching with wary eyes. Some recognized him immediately, whispering among themselves, "Is that Kwame Adebayo? The boy who left with nothing and returned with everything? Why has he come back now?" Kwame dismounted, his fine gold-trimmed robes and leather sandals standing in stark contrast to the simple woven tunics of the villagers. Then, a voice called out from the crowd. "So, the rich man finally remembers us." Kwame turned, and his breath caught in his throat. It was Zainab. She stood at the front of the crowd, hands on her hips, her dark eyes filled with something he couldn't quite name. The tension in the air was thick. Zainab, once his closest friend, now looked at him like a stranger. 15 years, she said, her voice steady. And not a single letter. Kwame sighed. I know. You were busy. She crossed her arms, but there was something behind her anger, something deeper. Kwame glanced at the crowd. The people watched in silence, waiting. He knew then that his return was not a celebration, it was a test. He bowed his head slightly. "I did not return to boast of wealth. I returned to remember who I am." The village elder, Nana Efua, stepped forward. She was an old woman now, her back slightly bent with age, but her eyes were sharp. "Then let us see if you still remember your people," she said. And with that, the villagers slowly stepped aside, allowing him to pass. Zainab, however, did not move. She held his gaze for a long moment before finally turning away. The message was clear. He had come home. But he had not yet been forgiven. Kwame settled into the small house that had once belonged to his family. It had been left untouched for years, dust gathering in the corners, the wooden door creaking from age. As he walked through it, memories flooded back. The nights spent dreaming of a better life, the hunger, the struggles, the promise he had made to himself. "I will never come back until I have everything." And yet here he was, rich, powerful, and still searching. Later that evening, as he sat outside beneath the clear night sky, Zainab arrived. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed. "You say you came to remember who you are. But do you even know who we are anymore?" Kwame met her gaze. "Tell me." She hesitated, then finally sat beside him. "My father died while I was still at the market in Asao," she said quietly. "By the time I returned, our home was gone. Our debts were too great. I had to care for my mother, my younger brother." Kwame felt a sharp pang in his chest. "I didn't know," he said softly. "You didn't ask." The words cut deep. Zainab stood, brushing dust from her dress. "You left, Kwame, and life moved on without you." She started to walk away, but then paused. Without looking back, she said, "Chief Osei owns most of the village now. If you really want to remember who you are, maybe start there." Then she was gone. Kwame sat in silence, staring at the moonlit sky. Chief Osei, a name he had not heard in years. The boy he once knew as a rival. The man who had taken control of the village. The true test of his return was only beginning. Kwame spent the next day walking through the village. He listened to the merchants, the elders, the children playing in the dust. He watched how Chief Osei's name brought silence and fear. The man owned the land, the debts, the trade routes. And he ruled them with a firm grip. Kwame had built his fortune in Asao with skill and strategy. But Osei had built his with power and control. As Kwame stood near the market, observing, a deep voice interrupted his thoughts. Well, the rich boy returns." Kwame turned. Chief Osei. He was older now, broader in the shoulders, his fine silk tunic a clear sign of his wealth. But his eyes held the same sharpness they always had. "You've built quite the empire," Kwame said. Osei smirked. "And you've abandoned one." They studied each other. Two men who had walked different paths. Two men who now stood in each other's way. Finally, Osei stepped closer. His smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "Welcome home, Kwame Adebayo," he said. "Enjoy your stay, while you still can." Then he walked away, leaving Kwame alone in the middle of the marketplace. A cold wind passed through the village. And for the first time since his return, Kwame realized that coming home was only the first battle. The real war was yet to come. Night fell over Akan Valley, and the village streets grew quiet. The scent of burning wood and spiced stew lingered in the air as Kwame sat outside his old family home, staring into the dark. Osei's words haunted him. "Enjoy your stay, while you still can." It was a threat, veiled in politeness. Kwame had spent years mastering the art of negotiation, of power, of wealth. But Akan Valley was not the world of merchants and traders. It was a world of tradition, of loyalty, of things that could not be bought. And Chief Osei had spent those same years tightening his grip on everything Kwame had once called home. As Kwame sat in thought, Jabari emerged from the shadows, his old face lined with worry. "You cannot fight a lion in his own den without knowing the way out," Jabari said. Kwame sighed. "Then tell me, what has Osei done to this village?" The old man sat beside him, stirring the embers of the small fire. His voice was low, almost as if the trees themselves were listening. "Osei is not a man. He is a shadow," Jabari said. "When the Great Famine struck 5 years ago, he offered grain to the starving. But in return, they signed over their land." Kwame's jaw tightened. "Those who refused?" Kwame asked. Jabari hesitated, his eyes darkening. "They disappeared." The fire crackled between them. Kwame exhaled slowly. "And now, the people owe him everything, their homes, their crops, even their futures. And he reminds them of it every day." Jabari turned, his gaze steady. "If you truly wish to reclaim your place here, you will have to fight him. But not with money, not with power. You must win the hearts of the people." Kwame nodded, understanding the weight of those words. This would not be a battle of riches. It would be a battle of trust. The next morning, Kwame walked into the marketplace, not as a merchant, not as a rich man, but as a villager. He spoke to the blacksmith who had once been his father's friend. He helped the weavers, carrying heavy baskets of dyed cloth. He sat with the elderly, listening to their stories of the past. At first, people watched with suspicion. But then, slowly, the whispers changed. "Perhaps he has not forgotten us after all. Perhaps the boy we knew still exists beneath the fine robes." And then the true test came. A widow, Mama Abina, was being forced from her home. She stood before Chief Osei's men, clutching her 2 children, tears streaming down her face. "You cannot take my home," she cried. "I paid what I could." One of Osei's men sneered. "Then you should have paid more." Kwame stepped forward. "She owes you no more," he said. The crowd gasped. Osei's man turned, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade. "Who are you to say such things?" Kwame met his gaze, unwavering. "I am Kwame Adebayo, and if a debt must be paid, then I will pay it." A hush fell over the market. Then Mama Abina fell to her knees, sobbing. "Bless you, my son. Bless you." The people watched in silence. And for the first time, Osei's power was questioned. The news spread quickly. Osei sat in his grand house, his fingers tapping against the polished wooden table as his messengers told him what had happened. Kwame had stepped in. Kwame had challenged him, publicly. Osei's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. "So the rich boy thinks he is a savior," he murmured. "Let's see how long that lasts." He stood, his robes flowing around him like shadows. "Send for the enforcers. It's time to remind the village who owns it." And just like that, the war for Akan Valley had begun. Night had settled over Akan Valley, but an unease rippled through the air. The enforcers came at dawn. Kwame awoke to the sound of shouting outside. Torches burned in the hands of Osei's men, their shadows dancing against the walls of the village. Jabari burst into Kwame's room, his face tight with urgency. "Get up. They're here." Kwame grabbed his tunic and rushed outside. Osei's enforcers had surrounded Mama Abina's house. One of them, a giant of a man named Kojo, stepped forward. "This house belongs to Chief Osei now. Anyone who stands in the way of the chief's will." He let the threat hang in the air, his fingers tightening around the handle of his blade. The villagers gathered, their faces pale. This was how Osei ruled, through fear. Kwame inhaled deeply and stepped forward. "Mama Abina has paid her debts. This is her home. Kojo smirked. Says who? Kwame straightened. Says me. And if you have a problem with that, you'll have to deal with me. The crowd stirred. This was not how things were done. No one challenged the enforcers. Kojo laughed, amused. You, a merchant, will fight me? Kwame locked eyes with him. If that's what it takes. Kojo's smile faded. Osei had not expected this. The enforcers were used to striking fear into people, not facing resistance. Silence stretched between them. Then, Kojo took a step back. This isn't over. He signaled the others, and the enforcers retreated. The moment they were gone, Mama Abina collapsed in relief, clutching her children. The villagers whispered among themselves. For the first time in years, someone had stood up to Osei.
And won.
The village elders called for a meeting that evening. The people of Akan Valley gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree, the place where decisions had been made for generations. Kwame stood before them, his voice steady. I came back to this village to reclaim my home, but I see now that Akan Valley itself needs to be reclaimed. Osei has ruled through fear. He has stolen what belongs to you. But if we stand together, we can take it back. A murmur swept through the crowd. Then, a man stepped forward, a fisherman, weary and worn. Osei owns the river, he said. He takes half of what I catch. A woman spoke next. Osei's tax collectors leave me with nothing. My children go to bed hungry. More voices joined in. A spark had been lit. Then Jabari raised his staff. The choice is yours, Akan Valley. Will you bow to fear, or will you take back what is rightfully yours? A roar of agreement filled the air. Osei had ruled alone for too long. But a storm was coming. Osei sat in his hall, listening as his spies reported what had happened. His fingers curled into fists. This will not stand, he said. That night, fires erupted across the village. Osei's men stormed into homes, smashing pottery, setting fields ablaze. The air filled with screams and smoke. Kwame ran through the chaos, searching for Jabari. We have to stop this. Jabari's eyes darkened. Osei is not just warning us. He is declaring war. And war, Kwame would give him. At dawn, the villagers gathered, not with swords, but with strength in numbers. They blocked the roads, cutting off Osei's supply routes. They refused to pay taxes, starving Osei's wealth. They stood together, and for the first time in years, they were not afraid. Osei sent his enforcers, but this time, they were outnumbered. By midday, Osei's power was crumbling, and by sunset he was alone. Kwame stood in Osei's grand hall, the chief's throne behind him. Osei sat on the floor, his power stripped away. You have stolen, lied, and ruled through fear, Kwame said. Your time is over. Osei laughed bitterly. And what will you do now? Take my place. Kwame shook his head.
No.
Akan Valley belongs to its people. Not to me. Not to any one man. The elders stepped forward, placing their hands on Kwame's shoulders. Then you will lead us. Kwame hesitated. He had come here to reclaim his home. But now his home was the people. He nodded. And Akan Valley was free once more. Months passed. The fields grew green again. The people thrived. And Kwame, once a merchant, once a stranger, had become a leader, not by power, but by trust. As he stood beneath the baobab tree, watching the village come to life, Jabari stepped beside him. So, young one, was this the home you were searching for? Kwame smiled. Yes, he said. And more.